100 English questions with long answers. Welcome to Accent English Language. Let's start. Section 1. Grammar and Structure. 1. What are the rules for using articles a and the in English, and when do exceptions occur? Articles in English serve the purpose of specifying nouns. A and an are indefinite articles used when referring to a non-specific item, with a used before words starting with consonant sounds and an before vowel sounds. The is the definite article used for specific nouns that are known to both the speaker and listener. Exceptions occur in some idiomatic expressions with proper nouns, no article with names like France, or where articles are omitted for uncountable or plural nouns when speaking in generalities. Example, I love books. Some expressions like go to bed or go to school also drop articles for reasons rooted in the phrase's common usage. 2. What are the differences between the simple past tense and the present perfect tense in English? The simple past tense is used to describe actions that were completed at a specific time in the past, while the present perfect tense connects past actions to the present or describes experiences without specifying when they occurred. For example, I visited Paris last year. Simple past indicates a completed action at a definite point in the past. In contrast, I have visited Paris, present perfect, suggests that visiting Paris is part of the speaker's life experience, but the exact timing isn't important. 3. How do active and passive voices differ, and when should each be used? In the active voice, the subject of the sentence performs the action. Example, the chef cooked the meal. In the passive voice, the object of the action becomes the subject. Example, the meal was cooked by the chef. The active voice is generally preferred for its clarity and directness, while the passive voice is useful when the focus is on the action itself or when the actor is unknown or unimportant. Example, the window was broken. Section 2. Literature and Reading Comprehension. 4. How does Shakespeare explore the theme of power in Macbeth? In Macbeth, Shakespeare delves into the corrupting nature of power through the protagonist's journey from a loyal and honorable nobleman to a tyrannical ruler driven by ambition. Macbeth's encounter with the witches ignites his desire for power, leading to his murder of King Duncan. His ascent to the throne marks the beginning of his moral decline, as he uses ruthless means to secure his position. Shakespeare demonstrates how unchecked ambition, influenced by external forces and internal desires, can lead to the destruction of oneself and others. Lady Macbeth, initially the stronger partner in their pursuit of power, also succumbs to guilt and madness, showcasing the psychological consequences of their actions. 5. What are the key themes of George Orwell's 1984, and how do they reflect the historical context of the novel? 1984 explores themes such as totalitarianism, surveillance, and individualism versus state control. Orwell's dystopian society, Oceania, is ruled by a party that employs constant surveillance, propaganda, and fear to maintain absolute power over its citizens. The novel reflects the anxieties of Orwell's time, particularly the rise of totalitarian regimes like Stalinist Russia and Nazi Germany, where political control was achieved through similar means. The party's manipulation of truth and history, embodied in the slogan, "War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength," represents Orwell's critique of political regimes that distort reality to suppress dissent and maintain power. Section 3. Essay and creative writing prompts. 6. Describe a situation where you had to overcome a significant challenge. How did you handle it, and what did you learn from the experience? This can be a prompt for a long reflective essay where the respondent would elaborate on personal experiences, resilience, lessons learned, and future growth. The answers can vary significantly based on personal life experiences and the depth of reflection. 7. What role do technology and social media play in modern communication, and how have they changed the way people interact with one another? In today's world, technology and social media have revolutionized how people communicate. Platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram allow for instant communication across vast distances, enabling people to share ideas, images, and messages within seconds. While this fosters global connections and access to information, it has also introduced challenges such as reduced face-to-face interactions, privacy concerns, and the spread of misinformation. The balance between convenience and these emerging social issues reflects the ongoing impact of technology on human interaction. Technology's pervasive influence shapes personal relationships, workplace dynamics, and societal norms. Section 4. Historical and cultural analysis. 8. Analyze the causes and effects of the Industrial Revolution. How did it change society? The Industrial Revolution, which began in the late 18th century in Britain, was caused by several factors, including technological innovation, the availability of natural resources like coal and iron, and a growing population that provided both labor and markets for goods. The effects were far-reaching. It transformed economies from agrarian to industrial, led to urbanization as people moved to cities for factory work, and caused significant social changes. While it spurred economic growth and innovation, it also resulted in poor working conditions, child labor, and environmental degradation. The Industrial Revolution laid the groundwork for modern capitalism and altered class structures, ultimately leading to labor movements and reforms. Section 5. Advanced Grammar and Usage. 9. What is the difference between fewer and less, and how are they correctly used? Fewer is used with countable nouns, while less is used with uncountable nouns. For example, fewer apples would refer to a smaller number of individual apples, and less water refers to a reduced quantity of water, which cannot be individually counted. The confusion often arises when speaking about time, money, or distances, which though technically countable, are typically treated as uncountable. Example, less than $10 is more common than fewer than $10. 10. What are dangling modifiers, and how can they be corrected? A dangling modifier is a word or phrase that modifies a word not clearly stated in the sentence. This often happens when the subject being modified is missing or unclear. For example, running down the street, the car was seen, suggests that the car was running, which is not the intended meaning. To correct this, one could revise the sentence to, running down the street, I saw the car. Here, the subject, I, is clarified. Dangling modifiers create confusion, so sentences must be restructured to clearly link the modifier to its intended subject. Section 6. Literature Analysis. 11. Discuss the significance of symbolism in The Great Gatsby. What symbols are used, and how do they contribute to the novel's themes? In The Great Gatsby, F. Scott Fitzgerald uses symbolism to deepen the meaning of the narrative and illuminate key themes such as the American dream, wealth, and class disparity. The green light at the end of Daisy's dock symbolizes Gatsby's hopes and dreams for the future, as well as the unattainable nature of the American dream. The Eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg, depicted on a billboard overlooking the Valley of Ashes, represents the moral decay of society, and some interpret them as a symbol of a distant, indifferent God. The Valley of Ashes itself symbolized the stark divide between the wealthy elite and the struggling lower class. Each symbol weaves into the broader commentary on the emptiness and moral corruption at the heart of 1920s American society. 12. How does To Kill a Mockingbird address racial injustice, and what lessons can be drawn from the novel's portrayal of morality? To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee addresses racial injustice through the trial of Tom Robinson, an African-American man wrongfully accused of raping a white woman, Maila Ewell. The novel is set in the deeply segregated American South during the 1930s, where racial prejudice dominates the legal system and society. Through the moral integrity of characters like Atticus Finch, who defends Robinson despite knowing the societal backlash, Lee explores themes of justice, empathy, and the moral failures of a biased society. The novel encourages readers to confront their own prejudices and to stand up for what is right, even when it's unpopular or dangerous. The lessons in empathy, fairness, and standing against systemic racism resonate beyond the book's historical setting, making it a timeless piece on moral courage. Section 7. Writing Prompts. 13. Describe a futuristic world where human and artificial intelligence coexist. How does society function, and what challenges arise from this relationship? In a futuristic society where human and artificial intelligence, AI, coexist, daily life would be a blend of human creativity and AI efficiency. AI could handle routine tasks such as managing resources, optimizing city infrastructures, and even participating in policy decisions. Humans might focus more on innovation, arts, and interpersonal relationships as their workloads become lighter. However, the relationship between humans and AI could lead to significant challenges. Economic disparity could widen between those who control AI technologies and those whose jobs are replaced by automation. Ethical dilemmas about autonomy, privacy, and the extent to which AI should influence decisions would emerge. AI might also develop its own consciousness, leading to complex social dynamics where rights, ethics, and the nature of intelligence itself are questioned. 14. Imagine you are tasked with colonizing Mars. What steps would you take to ensure the survival of the first settlers, and what challenges would you face? Colonizing Mars would require meticulous planning and coordination. The first priority would be to establish a sustainable habitat that protects settlers from the harsh Martian environment, including extreme cold, radiation, and a lack of breathable atmosphere. Initial steps would involve sending robots to construct self-sustaining habitats, with air filtration systems, temperature regulation, and radiation shielding. Water could be extracted from Martian ice, and food might be grown in controlled environments using hydroponic farming. Challenges would include ensuring a reliable supply chain from Earth for essential resources, maintaining psychological well-being in the face of isolation, and developing technologies to support long-term human survival in a low-gravity, high-radiation environment. Political and ethical issues could also arise, such as governance structures and the rights of settlers in a non-Earth jurisdiction. Section 8. Global issues and debates. 15. What are the main causes of climate change, and how can humanity mitigate its effects? Climate change is primarily caused by the increase of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, CO, methane, CH, and nitrous oxide, NO, in the atmosphere, which trap heat and cause global temperatures to rise. These gases are emitted through human activities such as burning fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas, deforestation, and industrial agriculture. The effects of climate change include rising sea levels, more frequent and severe weather events, and disruptions to ecosystems and food production. Mitigating its effects requires a global effort to reduce emissions, transition to renewable energy sources like solar and wind, increase energy efficiency, and promote reforestation. International agreements like the Paris Accord aim to unite nations in reducing their carbon footprints, while innovations in technology, such as carbon capture, could help reverse some damage. Social change is also crucial, with individuals and businesses adopting more sustainable practices in their daily lives. 16. How do cultural and religious differences shape international conflicts, and what can be done to foster peace and understanding among nations? Cultural and religious differences often play a significant role in international conflicts by exacerbating tensions between groups with differing worldviews, values, and historical grievances. In some cases, these differences are used by political leaders to justify aggression or to rally populations behind a cause, as seen in conflicts rooted in nationalism or religious extremism. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict, sectarian violence in the Middle East, and the historical tensions between India and Pakistan are examples where cultural and religious identities have been at the forefront. To foster peace and understanding, it is important to promote intercultural dialogue, increase education about other cultures and religions, and encourage mutual respect. Diplomatic efforts, such as peace-building initiatives and international organizations like the United Nations, play a crucial role in mediating conflicts. Solutions often require addressing underlying issues such as poverty, access to resources, and political representation, which may be exacerbated by cultural divides. Section 9. Linguistics and Language. 17. What are the major differences between formal and informal language, and when should each be used? Formal language is typically used in professional, academic, or serious contexts, while informal language is more casual, relaxed, and used in everyday conversation. Formal language tends to use complete sentences, a wider range of vocabulary, and more complex sentence structures. It avoids contractions, colloquialisms, and slang. For instance, formal writing might say, "I would appreciate it if you could provide me with the details," whereas informal speech would say, "Can you give me the details?" Formal language is appropriate in business correspondence, academic papers, and public speaking, whereas informal language is more suited to texts, emails with friends, or conversations in a relaxed setting. The choice depends on the audience and the context. Using formal language in an informal context can seem stiff, while using informal language in a formal setting can appear unprofessional. 18. What is code switching, and why do people engage in it? Code switching is the practice of alternating between two or more languages or dialects within a conversation, sentence, or even a single phrase. It often occurs in multilingual communities where speakers switch based on context, the subject of conversation, or the social situation. People engage in code switching for various reasons: to fit in with a particular social group, to better express ideas that might not translate well into a single language, or as a response to social cues like the language proficiency of the listener. For example, in a conversation with both English and Spanish speakers, a bilingual person might switch between English and Spanish depending on who they're addressing. Code switching can also reflect cultural identity and a sense of belonging to multiple communities. Section 10. Writing techniques and styles. 19. What is the importance of tone in writing, and how can a writer adjust tone to suit different audiences? Tone refers to the writer's attitude or emotional stance towards the subject and the audience. It can be formal, informal, serious, playful, or anywhere in between, and it affects how the message is received. A writer can adjust tone by changing vocabulary, sentence structure, and the level of detail provided. For example, writing a technical report requires a neutral, formal tone with clear, precise language. In contrast, a personal blog post might take on a conversational and relaxed tone, using colloquial expressions and direct address, you. Adapting tone to the audience is crucial because it helps establish the relationship between the writer and the reader. Using the wrong tone can alienate the reader or miscommunicate the writer's intent. 20. What are the key elements of persuasive writing, and how can they be effectively employed? Persuasive writing aims to convince the reader of a particular point of view or to take a specific action. Key elements include clear thesis, a strong, clear statement of the position or argument. Logical reasoning, using facts, data, and logical arguments to support the thesis. Emotional appeal, appealing to the reader's emotions, values, or sense of justice. Credibility, establishing the writer's or speaker's authority on the subject. Counterarguments, addressing and refuting opposing viewpoints to strengthen the argument. For example, in a persuasive essay on the importance of environmental conservation, a writer might use facts about climate change, logical reasoning, appeal to the reader's responsibility toward future generations, emotional appeal, cite scientists and environmentalists to build credibility, and address common arguments against environmental regulation, counterarguments. The combination of these strategies makes the writing more compelling. Section 11. Poetry and Literary Devices. 21. What is the significance of metaphor in poetry, and how does it enhance meaning? A metaphor is a figure of speech that makes a comparison between two unrelated things, suggesting that one thing is another to highlight a particular quality or aspect. In poetry, metaphors are powerful tools for creating vivid imagery and deeper emotional resonance. They allow poets to express complex ideas and feelings in a more nuanced and layered way. For instance, in Emily Dickinson's poem, "Hope is the Thing with Feathers," hope is metaphorically compared to a bird, symbolizing its resilience and lightness. The metaphor enhances the poem by illustrating hope as something delicate yet enduring, which persists even in the darkest times. By bypassing literal language, metaphors can convey multiple layers of meaning, making the poem richer and more open to interpretation. 22. How does the use of enjambment in poetry affect the reader's experience and interpretation? Enjambment occurs when a line of poetry continues without a pause or punctuation into the next line. This technique creates a sense of movement and can build tension or urgency. It encourages the reader to move quickly from one line to the next, which can affect the rhythm and pacing of the poem. Enjambment also often emphasizes words or ideas by placing them unexpectedly at the beginning of the following line. For example, in T.S. Eliot's The Waste Land, enjambment is used to create a fragmented, flowing narrative that reflects the disjointed nature of modern life. It can also highlight contradictions or contrasts in meaning, as the reader's expectations at the end of a line may be subverted by the continuation in the next line. Section 12. Social and Cultural Debates. 23. How does media influence public perception, and what are the ethical implications of media bias? Media plays a critical role in shaping public perception by selecting which stories to tell, how they are told, and the tone with which information is presented. The framing of news stories, choice of language, and focus on particular issues can significantly influence how the public understands current events and forms opinions. Media bias, whether intentional or not, can skew public perception by highlighting certain facts while downplaying or ignoring others. For example, sensationalist reporting on crime or political events can create fear or mistrust, while underreporting on social issues can prevent necessary awareness and action. The ethical implications of media bias are profound, as journalists and media organizations have a responsibility to provide accurate, balanced reporting. When bias is present, it can distort public discourse, polarize communities, and undermine trust in media institutions. Ethical journalism requires transparency, accountability, and fairness in reporting to ensure that the public is informed rather than manipulated. 24. What are the main arguments for and against censorship on the Internet? Arguments for censorship include the need to protect vulnerable populations, such as children, from harmful content like violence, pornography, and hate speech. Governments and organizations argue that regulating content can prevent the spread of misinformation, protect national security, and reduce the risk of cyberbullying or online harassment. In authoritarian regimes, censorship is often justified as a means of maintaining social order and political stability. Arguments against censorship focus on the importance of free speech and the right to access information. Opponents of Internet censorship argue that it restricts individual freedoms, stifles creativity, and can be used as a tool for oppression. They contend that in democratic societies, the Internet should remain a space for open dialogue and the exchange of ideas, and that censorship can lead to the suppression of dissenting voices or minority opinions. Balancing the need for regulation with the protection of free speech is a complex ethical dilemma faced by governments and tech companies worldwide. Section 13. Creative Writing Prompts. 25. Write a story about a world where people can communicate telepathically, but only for 5 minutes each day. How does this ability affect relationships and society? In a world where telepathy is possible for only 5 minutes a day, communication becomes both a powerful tool and a source of anxiety. People must choose their moments carefully, knowing that telepathic communication can reveal thoughts and emotions in a way spoken words cannot. Relationships might become more intimate, as couples and friends use their daily window to express their deepest feelings, but it could also lead to tension, as hidden truths or suppressed emotions come to light. Society might change as well, with businesses conducting important negotiations during these brief telepathic windows, while governments could use it for diplomacy or interrogation. The limitation on time would make every telepathic exchange precious, and the inability to take back what is shared could have profound consequences on trust, honesty, and privacy. 26. Imagine a future where humans can upload their consciousness into a digital world. What are the implications of this technology on identity and mortality? The ability to upload human consciousness into a digital world would fundamentally change how we perceive identity and mortality. People could potentially live indefinitely in a virtual space, continuing to interact with loved ones and even shaping the digital landscape. The concept of death might lose its significance, as the mind could exist separately from the physical body. However, this raises profound questions about the nature of identity. Is the digital version of a person truly them, or just a copy of their consciousness? Would individuals still fear death if their minds could be preserved digitally, or would they experience a kind of existential crisis? The technology could also lead to new forms of inequality, with only the wealthy able to afford digital immortality, while others are left behind in the physical world. The implications for personal identity, ethics, and society would be vast and complex. Section 14. Advanced Grammar and Syntax. 27. What are phrasal verbs, and why are they often difficult for non-native English speakers to learn? Phrasal verbs consist of a verb and one or more particles, prepositions or adverbs that create a meaning different from the verb alone. For example, look up can mean to search for information, which is quite different from the literal meaning of look and up. The challenge for non-native speakers comes from the idiomatic nature of phrasal verbs, since the meaning often cannot be inferred from the individual words. They must be learned as fixed expressions. Moreover, some phrasal verbs have multiple meanings depending on context, such as take off, which can mean to remove something, like clothes, to leave quickly, or for an airplane to ascend. The difficulty also lies in their frequent use in everyday conversation, making it important to understand both their literal and figurative meanings. 28. Explain the differences between transitive and intransitive verbs, providing examples of how they function in sentences. A transitive verb requires a direct object to complete its meaning, while an intransitive verb does not. For instance, in the sentence, she kicked the ball, kicked is a transitive verb because it requires an object, the ball, to make sense. Without the object, the sentence would feel incomplete. On the other hand, in the sentence, she laughed, the verb, laughed, is intransitive because it doesn't need an object. The action stands on its own. Some verbs can be both transitive and intransitive depending on the context. For example, he reads is intransitive, while he reads books is transitive, with books serving as the direct object. Section 15. Literature Analysis. 29. What are the major themes in Pride and Prejudice, and how do they reflect the societal norms of the time? Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen explores themes such as class, marriage, and morality, which are deeply intertwined with the social structure of early 19th century England. One of the central themes is the critique of marriage as a social contract. The novel portrays the pressure on women to marry for financial security rather than for love. Characters like Charlotte Lucas, who marries Mr. Collins for stability, highlight the pragmatic nature of marriage in this context. Another theme is the importance of individual growth, seen through Elizabeth Bennet's journey from prejudice toward Darcy and Darcy's transformation from prideful arrogance to humility. Class divisions are also a key theme, with the novel emphasizing the rigid social hierarchy of the time and how characters navigate it. These themes reflect societal norms regarding gender roles, wealth, and social standing, while also critiquing the limitations placed on individuals, especially women. 30. How does George Orwell use irony in Animal Farm to convey his critique of totalitarian regimes? Orwell's Animal Farm is rich with irony, which he uses to critique the hypocrisy and corruption of totalitarian regimes, specifically the Soviet Union under Stalin. The novel begins with the animals' idealistic revolt against their human oppressors, mirroring the Russian Revolution's promise of equality. However, as the pigs, led by Napoleon, consolidate power, they begin to resemble the very humans they overthrew. The irony is most evident in the pigs' manipulation of the commandments. For example, all animals are equal is eventually altered to all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others, highlighting the betrayal of the revolution's original ideals. Orwell's use of irony demonstrates how those in power often distort noble principles to justify their own privileges and control. Section 16. History and Society. 31. What were the primary causes of World War I, and how did it change the global political landscape? The primary causes of World War I were complex and intertwined, often summarized by the acronym MAIN: militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. European nations had built up large militaries and were entangled in defensive alliances, which turned a regional conflict into a global war. Nationalism stirred tensions, particularly in the Balkans, where the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand by a Serbian nationalist triggered the war. Imperialist competition for colonies exacerbated rivalries among the great powers. The war drastically altered the global political landscape by dismantling empires, Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, Russian, and German, redrawing national borders, and setting the stage for World War II due to the harsh terms of the Treaty of Versailles, which punished Germany. It also marked the decline of European dominance and the rise of the United States and Soviet Union as global powers. 32. How did the Cold War shape international relations in the second half of the 20th century? The Cold War, a period of intense ideological rivalry between the capitalist West, led by the United States, and the communist East, led by the Soviet Union, shaped international relations from the late 1940s to the early 1990s. The world became polarized, with many countries aligning with either the US or the USSR, leading to the formation of military alliances like NATO and the Warsaw Pact. While the Cold War never escalated into direct military conflict between the superpowers, it influenced numerous proxy wars, such as in Korea, Vietnam, and Afghanistan, where the US and USSR supported opposing sides. The Cold War also spurred an arms race, particularly in nuclear weapons, and a space race, both of which had profound implications for technological development. Diplomatic efforts like deterrent and arms reduction treaties such as SALT, strategic arms limitation talks, were critical in easing tensions. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 marked the end of the Cold War, shifting the global balance of power towards a unipolar world dominated by the United States. Section 17. Writing and Argumentation. 33. What strategies can a writer use to create a strong argumentative essay? A strong argumentative essay hinges on a clear thesis, logical structure, and the effective use of evidence. The writer must first craft a compelling thesis statement that presents a specific claim or viewpoint. Each paragraph should begin with a topic sentence that ties back to the thesis, followed by supporting evidence, such as statistics, expert opinions, or real-life examples. A well-rounded argument addresses counterarguments, acknowledging opposing viewpoints and refuting them with reasoned responses. This demonstrates that the writer has considered multiple perspectives. The essay should conclude by reinforcing the thesis and summarizing the key points without introducing new information. Finally, a persuasive tone and careful attention to word choice can help sway readers by appealing to both logic and emotion. 34. How can a writer use rhetorical devices to enhance persuasive writing? Rhetorical devices are tools that writers use to enhance the persuasiveness and emotional impact of their arguments. These include ethos, establishing credibility or authority. A writer might build ethos by citing reputable sources or highlighting their own expertise in a subject. Pathos, appealing to the audience's emotions. For instance, in an essay advocating for climate change action, a writer might invoke pathos by describing the suffering of vulnerable communities due to natural disasters. Logos, using logical arguments and evidence. Persuasive writing often incorporates logos through facts, statistics, and logical reasoning that supports the thesis. Analogies and metaphors, comparisons can make complex ideas more relatable. For example, comparing the economy to a machine that needs regular maintenance makes an abstract concept more concrete. Repetition. Repeating key points can reinforce the writer's message, making it more memorable. These devices, when used effectively, can make an argument more engaging and convincing by appealing to the reader's sense of reason, ethics, and emotion. Section 18. Social and political issues. 35. What are the arguments for and against universal healthcare? Arguments for universal healthcare focus on the idea that healthcare is a human right, and access to medical services should not depend on one's ability to pay. Proponents argue that universal healthcare systems can reduce overall healthcare costs by preventing illnesses before they become severe and by negotiating lower prices for drugs and services. Countries with universal healthcare, such as Canada and the UK, often have better health outcomes and lower per capita costs than the US, where healthcare is largely privatized. Universal healthcare also reduces inequality, ensuring that all citizens receive the care they need regardless of income. Arguments against universal healthcare often center around concerns about cost, efficiency, and government control. Opponents argue that government-run healthcare systems can lead to long wait times, reduced quality of care, and higher taxes. They also contend that universal healthcare could stifle innovation in the medical field by reducing competition and the profit incentive for pharmaceutical companies and healthcare providers. Critics believe that individuals should have the freedom to choose their own healthcare plans and providers rather than being bound to a government-run system. 36. What are the impacts of income inequality on social cohesion and political stability? Income inequality can have profound impacts on social cohesion and political stability. When wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few, it often leads to resentment and social unrest, as the majority of the population feels excluded from economic prosperity. High levels of inequality can erode trust in institutions and the government, leading to a rise in populism and extremism, as people seek radical solutions to their perceived disenfranchisement. In unequal societies, access to education, healthcare, and opportunities is often limited for those at the bottom, perpetuating cycles of poverty and reducing social mobility. This can create a sense of hopelessness and alienation, weakening the bonds that hold society together. On a political level, income inequality can destabilize democracies by fostering corruption, as the wealthy use their influence to shape policies in their favor, further marginalizing the poor. Long-term inequality can also lead to economic stagnation, as consumer demand declines when the majority of people cannot afford to spend, which exacerbates the divide between the rich and the poor. Section 19. Section 19. Technology and Society. 37. What are the benefits and potential risks of artificial intelligence, AI, in healthcare? Benefits of AI in healthcare include improved diagnostics, personalized treatment, and efficient resource management. AI-powered algorithms can analyze medical data more quickly and accurately than humans, leading to earlier diagnoses for conditions like cancer or heart disease. For instance, AI can detect patterns in medical images or genetic data that might be missed by the human eye. AI can also tailor treatment plans to individual patients by analyzing vast amounts of data from similar cases, enabling more personalized care. Additionally, AI can streamline administrative tasks, like scheduling appointments or managing electronic health records, freeing up time for healthcare professionals to focus on patient care. Risks of AI in healthcare include concerns about data privacy, job displacement, and the potential for bias in AI systems. AI systems rely on large datasets, and if these datasets are not properly secured, they could be vulnerable to breaches, exposing sensitive patient information. There is also the fear that AI could replace healthcare workers, particularly in roles such as diagnostics or administrative tasks, leading to job losses. Moreover, if AI systems are trained on biased data, they could perpetuate or even exacerbate inequalities in healthcare, providing suboptimal care to certain groups based on race, gender, or socioeconomic status. 38. How has the rise of social media affected interpersonal communication, and what are the implications for social relationships? Social media has transformed the way people communicate, offering both positive and negative effects on interpersonal relationships. On the positive side, social media enables individuals to maintain connections across distances, facilitates real-time communication, and provides platforms for self-expression and sharing. It allows people to stay in touch with friends and family who might otherwise be inaccessible, and it has even created new avenues for social activism, community building, and networking. On the negative side, social media can lead to superficial or weakened relationships. Because much of social media communication is asynchronous and text-based, important nonverbal cues, such as body language and tone, can be lost, leading to misunderstandings. There is also the issue of social comparison, where individuals compare their lives to the idealized versions of others presented online, which can lead to feelings of inadequacy, anxiety, or depression. Furthermore, social media encourages the constant checking of notifications and updates, which can distract from face-to-face interactions, leading to what some call phubbing, snubbing people in favor of one's phone. The rise of echo chambers, where users only interact with those who share their views, can also reduce meaningful debate and lead to polarization. Section 20. Philosophy and Ethics. 39. What are the main tenets of utilitarianism, and how does it apply to ethical decision-making? Utilitarianism is a consequentialist ethical theory that suggests actions should be evaluated based on their outcomes, specifically aiming to maximize overall happiness or utility. The central idea is that the best action is the one that produces the greatest good for the greatest number. There are two main forms of utilitarianism: act utilitarianism, which focuses on the consequences of individual actions, and rule utilitarianism, which advocates following rules that generally lead to the greatest good. In practical terms, utilitarianism applies to ethical decision-making by encouraging individuals and policymakers to weigh the potential benefits and harms of any given action. For example, in healthcare, a utilitarian approach might prioritize allocating resources to treatments that benefit the most people, even if it means fewer resources for rare diseases. However, critics of utilitarianism point out that it can sometimes justify morally questionable actions, like sacrificing the few for the many, if the overall result leads to greater happiness. This raises concerns about justice and individual rights. 40. What are the ethical implications of genetic engineering, particularly in human embryos? Genetic engineering, particularly when applied to human embryos, raises a host of ethical questions related to safety, consent, inequality, and the nature of human identity. One key concern is the risk of unintended consequences. While genetic engineering holds promise for eliminating hereditary diseases and improving health outcomes, manipulating genes in embryos could have unforeseen effects on future generations, given the complexity of the human genome. Additionally, there is the question of consent. Embryos cannot consent to having their genes altered, and future generations would inherit any changes without their consent either. Another significant issue is the potential for social inequality. If genetic engineering becomes commercially available, it could create a divide between those who can afford to enhance their offspring and those who cannot, exacerbating existing socioeconomic inequalities. This could lead to a class of genetically privileged individuals with enhanced intelligence, strength, or appearance, further entrenching divisions in society. There is also the philosophical question of what it means to be human. If we begin altering our genetic makeup at will, we may lose sight of the natural diversity and randomness that define human life. Section 21. Environmental Science and Policy. 41. What are the main causes of climate change, and how can societies mitigate its effects? Climate change is primarily driven by human activities that increase concentrations of greenhouse gases, GHGs, in the atmosphere, notably carbon dioxide, CO2, methane, CH4, and nitrous oxide, N2O. The burning of fossil fuels for energy and transportation, deforestation, and industrial agriculture are the largest contributors. When GHGs accumulate, they trap heat in the Earth's atmosphere, causing global temperatures to rise, a phenomenon known as the greenhouse effect. Mitigation strategies to address climate change include transitioning to renewable energy sources like solar, wind, and hydropower to reduce dependence on fossil fuels. Energy efficiency improvements, such as better insulation in buildings and more fuel-efficient vehicles, can also lower emissions. In agriculture, practices like reforestation, soil conservation, and reducing methane emissions from livestock are critical. On a policy level, carbon pricing mechanisms, such as carbon taxes or cap-and-trade systems, incentivize businesses to reduce their carbon footprints. International agreements, like the Paris Agreement, aim to unite countries in setting emission reduction targets, though success depends on political will and global cooperation. Adaptation strategies, like building flood defenses and improving water management, are also necessary to deal with the effects of climate change that are already unavoidable. 42. What are the arguments for and against nuclear energy as a solution to the climate crisis? Arguments for nuclear energy center on its ability to produce large amounts of electricity with minimal greenhouse gas emissions. Unlike coal or natural gas, nuclear power does not emit CO2 during operation, making it a low-carbon energy source that can help mitigate climate